we have a special guest today, who's special to me because she helps me out all the time with questions. And I'm a special case. I bring her lots of questions. We've had many questions across the council asking about special needs, parents, children, and everything. And with the new update, the best person to brief it is you. So this is Miss Ashley Jerome, and I'm gonna let her take it from there.
All right, well, I don't think that there are any faces that I don't know, so this makes this a little bit less anxiety inducing for me, so that's nice. So let's start. This is going to be a few different topics, but in general, as Trish mentioned, we've got lots of scouts that we service that have special needs. Some you might know they have those needs, some you might not. So Dan, next slide, please. Just a little bit of background about myself. I have a Bachelor's of Science in Education with a dual certification in early childhood ed, pre-K to 4 and special ed K to 8. When I came to Montana, they were generous enough to extend that K to 12. I have 7 years of special ed teaching experience, both in Pennsylvania and Montana. It might be more than that. I kind of stopped counting after a while. But I served in a lot of different roles, from itinerant emotional support and autistic support to some learning support classes. I had self-contained emotional support classrooms and autistic support classrooms, and then some life skills instruction as well. And outside of the teaching world where I've had experience with this will be my 13th summer on camp staff this year. I've had scouts, scouters, and staff members with special needs. And something I do like to share with other people myself is I myself have some of these categories that people might not realize. So I have ADHD, I have anxiety, depression, things that you don't necessarily see. So when we talk about the next slide and what a disability is, in general, a disability is a condition that is going to limit a person's movement, senses, activities. It's something that a lot of times you can see it or you cannot. So some of the categories that you might see is physical disability. So this one's a little bit easier when you think about somebody with a special need, about supporting wise, because you can think, oh, a lot of times this support comes to mobility and access to the right equipment. So some type of physical disabilities are the mobility impairment. So this could be paralysis. It could be limb differences like amputation or chronic health conditions. This is one that a lot of people don't consider in this category, but this could be like cerebral palsy. The next one, learning disability. This is not always something you can see. And a lot of times it often manifests in seeing behaviors as well. One thing I like to say to people is when you think about scouts and you think about how they have this need to feel cool a lot of times with their peers, would you rather be the dumb scout, for lack of better words, or would you rather be the tough scout? Most people are going to take that last option. So sometimes with learning disabilities, you're going to see additional behaviors that come with this because nobody wants to be seen as less. And a lot of times when it comes to intelligence, that's where a lot of people are really judgmental with that part. And it's harder for some people to be more inclusive on those lines. So some learning disabilities that you might experience could be dyslexia. So that's struggles with reading and language processing. There's other versions that apply to math and numbers called dyscalculia. We're not going to go through all of the different acronyms today. I promise it's an alphabet soup of opportunity. I promise we're not going to go into all of those, but lots of different things. So cognitive and developmental, there are different categories in this as well. There's autism, there's Down syndrome, intellectual disabilities, lots of different ones that are starting to become more prevalent in our communities. Emotional disabilities, this could be anxiety, depression, PTSD, ADHD, and then you also have the social side, social anxiety, selective mutism. That is a fun one. I actually really enjoy that category. A lot of people don't know a lot about that, but it's mutism, you're not communicating verbally. So fun things that you can look into for that. Nobody is expecting anybody here to walk away with a teaching degree, a psychology degree, anything along those lines with these categories. But going into the conversations that we're going to have tonight, it is important to keep in mind, what is a disability when we're talking about special needs? Dan, next slide, please. So some other things I would like you guys to keep in mind. First and foremost, I would like you all to keep yourself open-minded. Sometimes people can be a little defensive with this category, because they're afraid to be offensive. So open-minded conversation, we're not judging. If you have questions, we're gonna get to those. So I took this first quote directly from our Disabilities Awareness Scouting website, and it is the basic premise of scouting for youth with disabilities, is that all youth want to participate fully and be respected like every other member of the unit. I think we could remove the part where it says with disabilities and apply that to all youth in general. And that's gonna be one of the themes I'm talking about tonight. A lot of the adaptations and modifications that we can make are going to support all youth. Ultimately, a lot of what we can do is going to support everyone. In that statement in particular, every single youth, regardless of what they are dealing with at home or personally, wants to feel respected. And as the adults in the program, it's our job to make sure that we're providing that. And I know I'm preaching to the choir with this group, and we don't have any issues with that. My next one is person first language. So what this means, and my emphasis on why I bring this up every time I talk about special needs, is that how we communicate can be a barrier. If we are using terminology or we are having certain tones when we are speaking about disabilities, that in itself can make somebody not feel included. There are certain vocabulary words that I refuse to say. And, excuse me, my voice is going out naturally. And when I hear people say it, it literally hurts my soul. Like, they're describing words that historically were medical diagnoses. They're not anymore. And we have to make sure that I'm not expecting you guys to be up with every single medical term, but if somebody informs you that the words that you are using are offensive, it is our job as scouters to not continue with that. And that's across the board, whether it's talking about disabilities or in general other changes in scouting. Person first language is where you take the person and you put them first. I know it's weird to think about like that, but it's an example would be wheelchair bound. I didn't talk about the person at all in that statement. I hate that phrase. I hate it. It is an individual that uses a wheelchair. The emphasis is on the person. Now, I will say there's a caveat to this. There are some communities that they prefer to identify with their disability. An example of that is the deaf community. It's not the community that is deaf community, and they're okay with that. That's what they want. Another common one with that is autism. A lot of people will say autistic community. Personally, I still struggle with that one. That's one change that has happened as I've been a teacher, and it's something I'm still grasping. But some people really own that, and they're perfectly okay with that. Other people are still more sensitive to their disabilities, and they don't want that to be their identifier. The really common phrase that goes with this is, and it's cliche, it's cheesy, I apologize in advance, see the able, not the label. What is this person able to do regardless of their disability? And that's going to be another theme of what we talk about today. And my last big one for this slide, big emphasis on today is, again, you're not expected to memorize this. You're not expected to be the sole resource and the sole problem solver. There are so many resources online, and I'm really excited to share that I just got permission and volunteered and voluntold myself to present a training course of this at the convention this year for how to support scouts with disabilities. And this is something we're also building a committee on. I got to nail down a chairperson first. So people are really busy. It's hard to get that done. I've got a lead on somebody. I'm just waiting on final confirmation so that we can proceed. And then what I would like to do with that council-wide is have a district representative or 2 or 3 that are familiar with supporting individuals with disabilities, where they're basically like a spokesperson, a chairperson, or what other councils call it is the district champion. And it's their job not to do anything with the advancement side, but just to go and support. Hey, I hear that somebody in your unit is struggling with a behavior. Let me see if maybe something that we're doing could support this better, or maybe something we're doing is causing this. Again, it's providing that resource. Work in progress. I'll keep you guys posted on how that goes. Okay, so next slide, please. I was like, it changed their screen, but it didn't change it there, it's fine. So, some of the things we're gonna cover tonight, Guide to Advancement, Section 10. Huge rewrite in 2025, so we're gonna talk about that. We're gonna talk about how we can offer support to scouts and leaders. And we're gonna go through some questions that have been submitted to Trish that we're gonna hopefully try to help provide some solutions. Then, my goal is, depending on how fast or how slow that I talk, that there will be an opportunity for you guys to ask questions at the end. We'll get to that in a little bit. So, with that being said, let's talk about the Guide to Advancement. Great timing, Beth. I know this is something you were questioning. So, as I mentioned, go ahead to the next slide. Huge rewrite of this section in 2025 and the guide in general. I am only specifically speaking about section 10, which is advancement for members of special needs. If you have other questions on the guide to advancement, I'm going to direct you to my direct supervisor, Mr. Terry Dutton. I will have his email on the screen at the end. He can support you with that. I'm just going to kind of go through what this section is entailing, and even some of this, I'm going to say, see these page numbers because it's so specific and it walks you through step by step. So, some of the topics that are covered in section 10, advancement flexibility, advancement for all of our different programs, and registering qualified members beyond the age of eligibility. So the first one, advancement flexibility. The type of flexibility that we can provide is really clearly defined in the guide. And I really like how they rewrote it. It's pretty explicit and it's pretty clear. So there's a lot less confusion. There's a lot less, well, the language is better too, which is fantastic. I love when people update language and they make it more correct. So with this, there's systems that are already in place to help units, to help determine some of these different changes. The biggest thing with this whole section that I'm going to talk about, and really, again, another theme for today, parent involvement. It's really hard. We know parents are really busy. I mean, we were just talking about it downstairs with the venturing conversation. It's going to be crucial, though, that we are using the people that know their scout best. Okay, I am a certified special ed teacher. That doesn't mean that I can walk in and go, this is what they need for support. It takes time. You know who already has that time with that individual? The parent. So utilizing the parent and guardians needs to be a part of this process. Now, that doesn't mean that you put the full burden of every single behavior on the parent. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more later. But when it comes to advancement flexibility in particular, it's a conversation that needs to be had with the parent. What helps your scout be successful? The really good thing about this program is that a lot of the individuals with special needs will have an IEP, an individual education. I just lost my English for a second.
Individual education.
My English just completely went out the window. Plan. I did it for 7 years. You'd think that I'd still be able to flow it off really easily, but apologize. They have these from their school. Now, there's a scouting version of this plan that can be completed with the advancement committee of the council, but it is paperwork and it does take preparation. Having that IEP from the parent and the parent involvement makes this process easier.
Question?
Yes.
So if you have a scout that has an IEP or a 504, who in the troop is the person that you usually coordinate with to sit down and make a plan with them?
We're gonna talk about that when I get to the supporting part. Don't let me forget.
So it sounds like that it would be easier with a parent, but a parent's not required for the ISP?
I would say it's not required, but in order to get the IEP, you need the parent. So to take the IEP to be able to apply it to the scouting version, it's gonna be a lot easier if the parent is involved. They don't have to, but you can't get that paperwork without them, because you can't just call the school district and get it, obvious. Yeah, great question. Okay, so on this section, when in doubt, please consult the Council Advancement Committee. They can support with this. Let's go a little bit more into detail for this part. So let's talk Cub Scouts. What is the motto for Cub Scouts?
Do your best.
Awesome, great. You know who that works for? Everyone,
Everybody?
whether they have a disability or not. Do your best is going to help you out. So there are some situations, go ahead, next one first. It might take longer for some of them. Their best might take them an extra 30 minutes in comparison to what may take somebody 5 minutes. That's okay, because I'm pretty sure most of our advancement and our requirements doesn't say you have to do this right now. Especially for Cub Scouts. Now, obviously, when you get to Scouts BSA and venturing and all that, there are some more time restrictions. We'll talk about that. So, some situations though are a little bit different, and they might require substitutions. What I mean by this, if an individual uses a wheelchair, they cannot complete a requirement that says walk or hike. So their best would be using their wheelchair if it is accessible. You might have to do a little bit more planning for this. Okay, you might have to scope out the route and make sure it's accessible. So that's where be prepared comes in mind. And we'll talk about that today. So the whole point of this is that they are matching the intent of the requirement. With Cub Scouts, a little bit more flexibility. That's why the section in this is a lot smaller than the Scouts BSA section. So my last big point on this is that the ultimate authority rests with the PAC. The PAC is going to work with the parent or guardian to establish this process of what do they need to feel supported and to get through this. Okay? Another big theme we're going to talk about, advancement is one method. Okay, so if it's our entire focus, especially with our Cub Scouts, they're not going to want to stay in the program. This, do your best, is going to make it a lot easier across the board. Now Scouts BSA, as I mentioned, a little bit more complicated. But ultimately, the requirements are to be completed as written. Whether we're talking merit badges, rank advancements, we're going to talk a little bit more in detail about which ranks do have some alternatives and which do not. No more, no less. If it is written, it's up to the formatting of how it's written, but some of these have flexibility. If it says list, well, I can type out a list on my phone. I can use voice to text on my phone to make a list. I can say, hey, Ruth, I'm going to tell you this. Can you write it down for me? I can type it on a computer. I can say a list. You have to look at how it is written because the convenience, preferences, or traditions of the person assessing the work cannot add to the requirement. Direct that quote right there from the advancement guide. If I am the merit badge counselor, I can't say, well, I prefer the list in bullet points, but I also want full sentences. That's not what it says. We can get creative with how they fulfill the wording as long as they meet the wording. Obviously, there are some requirements that are very explicit. Swim this length. But does it say in how much time? We have to look at the wording. We can be flexible as long as we're still meeting the requirement within Scouts BSA. Dan, go ahead. And that comes to this point of being open-minded. There are 3 ways that we can make this happen. The first one is being open-minded. Yes, they have to do no more, no less, but how they achieve no more, no less can be creative. Dan, go ahead. The next one is accommodations. And I'm going to talk briefly about these on this slide because the next 2 slides are about accommodations and modifications. I will be honest with you, modifications require you to do more work. So you're going to have to put that extra effort in, and we're going to talk about why. So accommodations versus modifications. No, they are not the same thing. We love this in the special ed world, trying to explain this sometimes to other teachers or to parents. Sometimes they're like, well, what's the difference? Well, I'm going to tell you. Accommodations is how they achieve this. So it could be they need extra time. They need assistive devices like text to speak, physical devices like wheelchairs or glasses, other adaptive equipment. So archery, they have the finger release. There are different ways to change the how. Some other examples might be slowing down the pace, taking breaks, breaking things into smaller chunks, moving from an outdoor classroom where there's a lot of distractions to an indoor classroom. That's the how. Nothing that we are doing actually changed. They're still fulfilling it. The next one, modifications, is making that change of the what. So these are a lot more rare. Mostly because, especially when it comes to merit badges, there's already some options for Eagle required badges. It says swimming, hiking, or cycling, or E-prep, or life-saving. So if swimming is a challenge, you might not do life-saving, you might do emergency preparedness. There's already a lot of things built in that these are not as needed. But that's merit badges. Where this is different is going to be when we're talking about the rank advancements. So we'll come back to that one. I know that's probably more the unit level, what you guys are really focused on, so we will talk about that. Go ahead. Sorry, I should have set it up with my animations that the first bullet point popped up. This is learning points for all of us. So accommodations, ultimately, this is a unit level decision with the support of the parent or guardian. They're again going to know their scout best and will be able to tell you this is what they need. Are we sensing the theme with this? Parent support. That's one of my themes today. Awesome. Okay. With modifications, they have to be approved by the Council Advancement Committee. So this is where I said it takes more work. So an individual scout advancement plan, ISAP, is required for rank, as well as the alternative Eagle Scout rank merit badges. There's an application for that. These all have to go through the advancement committee. So I'm not going to speak too much in depth about these because they're really written out in the guide explicitly how to do these like step by step. And you're going to have to talk to Terry Dutton anyways. So that's going to be who you're reaching out to here. Jane and Glenn, you guys are in a different council, so you're going to talk to your council advancement committee for that.
That process does take time as well. That's not just hey, can we do this? You're gonna need advance notice by, I would say, probably a couple weeks.
Yeah, and so this isn't something you're gonna go, okay, well, we're at like 16 and a half, 17 years old. We should probably start looking into this now. There are also certain categories of disabilities that will make you get additional options and opportunities when it comes to eligibility past the age. We'll talk about that. But this is, like I said, be prepared. This isn't something you show up on Monday night and say, oh, we're working on this advancement or this requirement tonight. We need to modify this. You can't do that. You can't show up to summer camp and say to the camp director, this needs modified. I would even argue when it comes to camp in particular and outdoor programs, accommodations, you need to have that level of preparedness too. We'll talk about that when we get to supporting scouts. So next part, we're going to talk about rank advancement. So Star, Life, and Eagle, there are no alternatives for the rank advancement. It needs to be done with what is there. When you get to the merit badges, you can request the alternative badges, but again, as Dan said, this is a process. There's a lot to do with this. There's paperwork. So don't just think you can just, okay, well, we're just going to take care of this right now. You've got to plan this out. Talk to your advancement committee. For Scout, Tenderfoot, second class, and first class, you can submit a request for alternate modifications and just in general, changing these out. So again, I'm not going to go too in depth into this. It is covered very thoroughly on pages 80 through 82 of the Guide to Advancement. So I highly recommend, if this is a route that you're looking into taking, that you review this. And once again, I defer to Terry Dutton for rank advancement. So that is all I'm going to go on for these. Here's some big notes that I want to emphasize for this section in general. First, rank advancement, again, one method of scouting. They want to have fun, like every other scout. So we need to make sure that our entire program is not focused on rank advancement. That's all I'm going to say on that one. Swim tests. There's been a lot of confusion with swim tests. So let me be explicitly clear with this one. You have to pass the swim test to the degree needed for the activity that you are trying to participate in. Advancement can be modified. Doing the activity cannot. You can't go out in a canoe by yourself or a kayak by yourself if you are not a swimmer. That has to be very clear when we're working with our units. We know we have a lot of scouts that have an aversion to water. there's a huge fear, whether they have a disability or not. However, think of the safety liability. If they are not a strong swimmer, they cannot go out in a ability level boat that they are not qualified for. So, really quick, directly from the aquatic supervision manual, excuse me while I read this word for word. Solo boating requires swimming level. Multi-person craft on calm water with little likelihood of capsizing or falling overboard does allow for that discrepancy. So I could be a beginner and go in a multi-person boat with a swimmer. Some examples of this: your fixed seat rowboat or a paddle boat with a swimmer, canoe or tandem paddlecraft with an adult swimmer. So difference there. Group on a motorboat or sailboat that is being operated by a skilled adult. So again, adult supervision is going to be a big part of that. Camps can be more restrictive on this policy. For example, at Melita, I generally require swimming in general for all boating activities because that water's not always calm. It could be calm 1 minute and not the next. So liability wise, you need to be a swimmer to be out on boats. There are sometimes during open program where I will say, you're a beginner, we have this canoe or this rowboat, you can go out because the water is calm today. But they're very aware of that with the swimming tags. We have a beginner out, we're watching extra carefully. The staff are all trained in that. So just keep that in mind for your planning purposes when going to camps. Swim tests can be modified for rank advancement, not for activity. And last one, good faith attempts. What I mean by this is that the advancement committees will often be looking that did you try to fulfill the advancement requirement as written first? If then they cannot, now let's talk about what we can do to modify it. But if we didn't try it first, we don't know if the scout can do it or not. It goes back to saying, did we set this expectation high enough? Did we challenge them? Or did we just go, oh no, they can't do it? There have been so many amazing stories where it comes down. So I used to be a climbing instructor and director, and that was like what I did at camps. And it was so great because you would see so many individuals that would come through with disabilities and you'd be like, oh, okay, they don't have their right limb below their knee. They might need alternatives and they're like, nope, I'm good. Do not assume what somebody can or cannot do. This goes to good faith attempts. Okay, next 2 slides, rapid fire mode. Venturers, same as Scouts PSA, minus 21 for that age, because that's the program age. And Sea Scouts, oh wow, looks exactly the same. It is. So read through those sections. The one caveat that I will say for Sea Scouts is that is an individual that is in a wheelchair or has a physical disability, it might incur other safety barriers when it comes to being on a vessel. So sometimes crews are the better option for that. Now, in Montana, we have little of both. We're talking about how to expand venturing, but keeping in mind similar procedures for advancements. Okay, next section. Registering qualified members beyond the age of eligibility, or BAE. So, this is covered starting on page 83 of the manual of Guide to Advancement, and it needs to go through the Council Advancement Committee. So, this slide is pretty brief as well. The biggest thing I want to emphasize is what are the ages of eligibility. For Cubs, if they're 11 or older, they're not in the Cub program anymore. So you would need to apply to extend that. Scouts BSA, 18 or older. Venturing and Sea Scouts, 21 or older. Again, covered in the Guide to Advancement, 83 to 84. And it goes to Mr. Terry Dutton, the Council Advancement Committee. So, primary purpose of this is so that they can continue, go back please. So that they can continue in the program for a long time. This is not just to extend so they can get Eagle. There are many individuals that have intellectual disabilities that will be in Scouts until they are 43 or older. It is a great opportunity for them, and it's not just to try to achieve Eagle. Thank you.
To chime in there too, there are other things that can qualify somebody for registration beyond the age of eligibility. But it does need to be like extraneous circumstances. So,
But that's also different than this specific one.
Okay.
So application processes are different, so go through the advancement specifically for
Yeah.
those. But yes, you are correct, there might be extenuating circumstances that might extend that, but for them, most of the time, bless, I don't know what that was. Most of the time, that's so that they can achieve Eagle, which is the
Correct,
difference
yes.
of this one.
yeah,
So that is a different, that's, yes, correct and different. Okay. This part is the bread and butter of why you guys are here. Okay, these are the questions. This is the how can we improve our units and our packs and everything for our scouts. I will be very transparent with you. I could speak for hours on this. In fact, how long have I been talking? That's not too bad. I'm okay. It's fine. I feel like it's only been 10 minutes. It's fine. I could talk for hours and hours on this. There's a million questions I could answer. I could sit here and list off all of these different accommodations that you can do. In fact, I have a really good book that if you're ever stuck on, hey, what do I need if this is the behavior that I'm seeing, or if this is the struggle that I'm experiencing. It's called the pre-referral manual, and I got it, and I will happily put it in my office downstairs in the basement here. Feel free to swing by if you're ever stumped and you're like, hey, I really don't know what to do, or just shoot me an email, and I will literally turn to that page, and there are some where it gives you 112 plus recommendations of things you can do. So perks of being a special ed teacher and having experience writing IEPs, there's lots of things that you can do. I'm also gonna say, over here to my right, I have Mr. Brett Gillio, who's very highly qualified to support with this as well. So if you ever need support when it comes to behaviors and things like that, there are resources available, and that's part of what we're gonna talk about. Before we do that though, with this quote, we are more alike than we are different. Generally, you hear this quote and you're like, oh, this is talking about how individuals with disabilities are just the same as us and they want to feel the same as us. Yes, however, I'm going to emphasize something different. It also means we have the same expectations, okay? Not just for rank advancement, not just for merit badges. Our social and emotional expectations need to be the same. They might need more support, but our expectations are the same. Our policies to go by, the Scout Oath and the Scout Law. We might need more support to get to that point with some individuals, disability or not, but the expectation needs to remain the same. Good. So, offering support. Oh, look, it's like we've said this a few times so far. Be prepared. It is our slogan for a reason, okay? It really helps us with thinking things through. It applies to a lot when it comes to support. You can think about just your meetings, pack, unit, whatever. You can think about your outings or an activity that you're going to do. It could be, okay, we're going to camp this summer. You've got to think through for your individuals, again, disability or not, what can we do to support them? What are some challenges that they might face? Because when you show up to camp, that's not the time to think about it. You've got to be thinking about this stuff in advance. So from preparing to making sure that your leaders are going to have the support they need. Melita is really strict with their adult to youth ratio because we want the most youth to be able to experience. However, I have never, and Terry has never, denied somebody who has said, hey, I've got an individual that's coming that needs their parent to come along for support. But it takes away from another parent that was already planning to go. We're at our ratio limit, what do? I add another adult slot on for you, that's what we do. Because that's gonna be what's best for the scout. That's what's best for the youth, and that's what we're here for. Now, if you're trying to come to the island just because you wanna take a tan, like, that's a very different story. Like, you're not, like, we've got a great adult program, but that's not why you're coming. You're coming because you want to support your scout. Awesome, I will add another slot in. I know.
I need a tan.
Well, you're coming this summer, right?
Yeah.
Don't worry, I'll push you to work. So, this also goes to prepping other youth in the unit. Quite honestly, there are some youth that have never been around other people with disabilities. And it's okay to have the conversation that people are different. There's such a stigma that people are afraid to address. It's okay to have the conversation. In fact, I already told Brett, I'm gonna kind of throw him under the bus here. He's really good with speaking with the other youth about this is what it looks like to work with somebody that's a little bit different. So, I already told him I was gonna volunteer him, but he's a really good one if you have an individual in your unit that has a disability and the other youth are struggling with understanding and being inclusive. Brett's a great person to come and talk to your unit. In fact, I highly encourage it. I saw the difference it made for the grade level that we worked with. The kids were amazing. I've never seen a group of kids so inclusive. And it was second nature to them. It was just being a good person, which, I mean, ultimately, Scout law, that's what we're going for anyways. But sometimes you have to educate them and be prepared with it. Brett, is there anything you want to add on that one? You're like, nope.
It's 7 o'clock.
Yeah, sorry. Sorry.
That's okay.
So again, our primary focus as a whole is to offer support and guidance to the youth in our scouting program. And that includes educating them sometimes when they don't know how to naturally do that themselves. So, did it break? Another big theme of the night that I want to emphasize with you guys is that scouting is already individualized. That's the best thing about this program. Everybody is working as a group, whether it's in a patrol or the unit or the pack, the den. They are working together, but they're working at their own pace and they're working on their own advancements and their own fun and their own activities. With or without a diagnosis or a disability, this is already happening. That's why scouting is so successful for individuals with disabilities. It's why anytime as a special ed teacher, the parents are like, I want to get them more involved, but I don't know how. Scouting. Push them to scouting because it's naturally built in to do this. With that in mind, you might have to encourage those extra positive interactions. You've got to keep in mind, oh, I don't know, a scout is friendly, scout is kind, scout is courteous, all those fun things that we go through, right? You get the point. Some youth, some adults have not worked with individuals with disabilities and they don't know how to. What we cannot do is allow bullying of any kind when it comes to whether they have a disability or not. And unfortunately, that is something that does occur. And it makes me very sad because that's everything against what we're here for. We're going to talk about how to address some of those things when I get to the next section of the frequently asked questions, because we can't do that. Did you have something to add?
So not necessarily bullying, but what I see a lot of times is volunteers frustrated and upset with a scout that has special needs, and it's obvious, it's obvious to the scout, it's obvious to other volunteers, and it's obvious to the other kids, and they see that and they take it and run with it.
Absolutely, and we're gonna talk about that too, because it's natural to get frustrated. Yeah. Again, certified special ed teacher, I can't tell you how many times where I'm like, I need a break. Yeah. I'm gonna go refill my water bottle. Can you watch my classroom? That is fine. But when they can read it and it's become obvious to them, that's on us, especially as the volunteers and the adults. We've got to be aware of ourselves. If you need to take a walk, take a walk. All of our interactions are not naturally going to be positive, but we need to work as scouters to make sure that we are doing our best, but it's the majority of the time. And it does make me sad how often scouts are experiencing that, and they internalize that. They know.
Especially when it's regular and consistent.
Exactly. And that can't happen. We've got to take that on us, and it cannot happen. We're the adults. And when the kids are picking up on it and then they're mirroring that, well, that goes to some other points I'm going to get to about being a role model. Go ahead. So, look at that. Modeling appropriate behaviors. Wow, you read my mind, Beth. So, it's really hard when a kid is escalated, they're upset, they're dysregulated, to not almost match their energy. My best advice for this, if a kid is up here, respond down here. They're going to start to come down to your level. If you are up here too, there's no resolution there. This is a little bit more than you guys need to know, but in working with my paraprofessionals as a special ed teacher, I said there's 3 R's, okay? First thing you need to do is regulate, get them calm. Whether that's taking a break, or you just need to use a strategy, you need to use a fidget, something to get yourself reset. That's your first one, because you can't do anything else until that happens. Then you're gonna relate. How can I understand you better? Then, and only then, can you reason. There is no logic when they are escalated. Think about a time that you were angry or somebody upset you. Was there any reasoning when you were angry? Probably not. And if you're an individual that doesn't have a disability that impacts that, imagine how much harder it is for them when that's the case. So just keep that in mind. You cannot respond to escalation with escalation. It's never going to work out for you, unless you just scare them into submission, and I don't recommend that strategy. Really, really not the best approach, and you're gonna ruin some relationships there. Don't do that. Good. So this one, there's a reason I have asterisks on this. So provide clear instructions. Mel, how would you explain clear to you? What does clear mean to you?
To me, or with working with,
No, just to you.
direct with no wiggle room.
Okay, Ruth, what does clear mean to you?
Direct,
Yeah, so
definitely.
you guys didn't follow my example, it's fine, I'll just say what I was going for. Sometimes the definition is different. So what Brett sees as clear, he's like, oh, well, I told you very clearly, you should do this, 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 and this. Okay, well, I lost you at this. What I'm going to say with this language is I'm gonna redefine what clear means. Clear is different for each person, so use short and sweet. Simple. 1 or 2 steps.
Yes.
Yes, keep it simple. Scout. I like that. Came up with that one on the spot. Thanks, Beth. Appreciate your support. Thanks. That's another good point. Offering support, be flexible, be adaptable, but be a little bit insane to yourself so that you can just go with the flow. Dave, you got something?
Yeah, to say to that point, asking the scout to repeat back to you what the instructions were. My son, I was a scoutmaster from my son is well, he was an Eagle. He's 21 now, but and even still today, he's on the autism spectrum, ADHD. And if I give him a 3 or 4 step instruction or scouts, many times that would happen, or the SPL, perhaps asking the scout to repeat back what the instructions were can make it clear and can help avoid stumbling blocks down the road.
Absolutely. Yeah, great point. Yeah, that's a really great piece of advice. I told Ruth literally just yesterday, I think it was, that if somebody tells me something, I've got 3 or 4 different calendars that all have the same thing, because the more times I write it down, the more it sticks with me. I am less likely to forget if I've written it in my notebook, put it on my calendar, put it on my weekly task list, and then typed it into my digital calendar, because that will send me an alert and I really won't forget. That repetition is key. So we're gonna go to the next one, because this one's a more vague yet specific one. We talked about structure and how that really helps people with disabilities in scouting. When it comes to environment, structure can look like different things, okay? It could be, where are they seated? For me, I knew as a student with ADHD, you could not put me next to a window, because I didn't hear a thing the teacher said. I'm watching that bird outside. You could not put me next to somebody who likes to talk, because I'm not going to sit there. My favorite report card comment was, she talks too much. And I'm like, yup, absolutely. You know why? Because I had the opportunity to. And that's not saying sit somebody over here completely by themselves, but figure out what works for that individual and structure it. I had students where I literally would put masking tape on the floor. This is your space. I know that you really struggle with organization. I don't care that you're a little messy right now, as long as it's in your space. Man, the teachers loved that, because then there were not things everywhere. You can provide that structure to the environment. You can provide it to the activities. So this could be chunking. That word, a lot of people are like, what does that mean? It literally just means breaking it down into smaller, reasonable, and manageable steps. If I was given a 20-page paper with 20 questions for it, I'm gonna look at it and go, nope. If you give me 2 pages with 3 questions, I'm gonna go, oh, I can do this. Make it reasonable. That is gonna work for almost everybody, regardless of disability or not. Again, a lot of these supports gonna help all of your scouts. Another example, and this comes with the be prepared, really think out your activities. I like to say, and this is what my first teaching job taught me, prepare for the worst. What can go wrong here? Because it will. You're gonna have a scout that's like, oh, what if I put my fork here? Don't do that. Be prepared. Maybe you keep the materials with one designated scout or with the adult until it's time to do it. Think about it from like range activities, okay? You're on a firing line and it's right there. That's a huge temptation, and it's really hard not to touch the shiny things. It's really hard in a chemistry merit badge not to go, that looks like it would taste good. Don't do that, okay? You've got to really think it out and structure and organize it. It's gonna make a world of difference. And my last big example for this is strategic pairing, okay? Mentors and buddies. It could be an older scout helping a younger scout. Obviously keeping all of your YPT limitations in mind with this. It could be an adult leader that is a huge like role model for them. Again, YPT things in mind. But this is not replacing the buddy system. This is who can I strategically pair with this person that is going to help guide them along. If we're all the adult leaders and the scout that's there works really well with Mel, if they're upset, I'm not gonna come in first. I'm gonna say, hey Mel, go chat with them. You've got to be intentional with everything that you do. And a lot of this is going to come down to having those conversations to know what is going to work. The next one, and again, works for everybody. Provide positive feedback. Feedback is not always, hey, you're doing great. It's not that participation trophy. That's not what this is. It's, hey, Mel, I really liked how you came in and you sat down quietly when it was time for the meeting to start.
Thank you.
Guess what she's gonna do next time? She's gonna come in and sit down quietly. I am telling you what I liked that you did. I might also say, hey Mel, I know that you did not come in and sit down quietly this time, but I like that we can have a conversation about it. You're gonna problem solve with it as well. But it's gotta be positive. Nobody likes to be told that they suck, and they don't like to be told it in a negative way. Again, disability or not, we've got to keep this in mind. We've talked about this one a lot, and that's why I started this one. Figure out what works for the individual. It's like the whole theme of the night, right? And again, scouting is already individualized. We should be doing this whether they have a disability or not. It's going to help everybody in the process. So it's not just about giving them the support to complete an advancement. It's also about advocating for them. You've got to be on their side. And I'm very confident that everybody that is in this meeting is the type of person that is doing that. However, not all of the other people that work with our scouts are doing this. So you need to be their advocate. You need to be their defense. And it makes me sad to even have to say that. You shouldn't have to be that person because everybody should be doing it. But we've got to be realistic. It's happening. Places like camp, it's very common for somebody who doesn't even know this individual to make snap judgments and make rude comments. It is our job to advocate. Okay, we're not going to crack down on that kid and be mean to the kid too, because then we're just as in the wrong. But I'm going to go to their unit leader and we'll say, hey, just so you know, this comment was made and it really upset my scout. I would like you to address it with your youth. Go to the camp leadership. Go to the event leadership for these different activities. You've got to advocate for your scout, but you also have to teach them to advocate for themselves. That's going to be a huge skill in developing as well. And that comes down to this last big point, promote inclusivity. It is the whole purpose of our program. Anybody can be a scout if we give them the same opportunity. That is our job. So my last biggest support option is to partner with the person who knows them best. This is the part where people get uncomfortable. People do not like to call the parent and say, hey, your scout looks like they need a little bit more support than others. How can I support your scout? Sometimes it's how we say it. People are so intimidated with having this conversation that they just don't have it. And then it comes to later, hey, you need to come pick up Johnny because he punched another kid. Hey, well, we saw all the warning signs beforehand if we were paying attention. Did we offer the support? Did we have the conversations beforehand? If the first time you're talking to this parent is when Brett's alarm is going off, that's not gonna work for you.
My bedtime.
Yeah, me too. I'm almost done, I promise, Brett.
Medication.
Hey, that's a great accommodation. Set alarms on your phone to remember, especially at camps.
Yep.
Fun little plug here. Camp is not the time to take your kids off their medications. Make sure your parents are aware of that.
We
The
take
last-
medication break the whole summer except for summer camp.
Yep, it is not the time to do it. It's not fair to the kid. It's really, truly not. I'm all for, sometimes you need the breaks from meds, let's reset and everything like that. Camp is not the time to test that theory. Nice little spot block there, thank you, Brett. I didn't know how I was gonna work that one in, but it's a good one. All right, so if we are waiting, it's too late. Shouldn't be the first time that you're calling them when they need to come pick up their scout. But also, quite honestly, most of them are expecting this phone call. They know their kid best. So be proactive, be prepared, talk to them beforehand so that you can put the steps in place to support the kid. A lot of parents sit there and they dread waiting for that phone call. I didn't go with them to camp this year. How long, are they gonna make it to day one? Are they gonna make it to day two? Can you imagine how that feels? It doesn't feel good. So when you have worked with the leadership, you have worked with the scouts, you've worked with the parents, you can do your best to even prevent that phone call from having to happen. And a lot of times you can ultimately remove that phone call from having to happen as you build the rapport and the trust with the kid. But at the end of the day, you need to ask these questions to these parents first. How can I ensure that the scout is successful as the leader? How can we help them get the most out of our program? And the older the scout is, ask them. They know it too. I would have loved if the teacher had looked at me and said, you seem like you're really struggling. What do you need right now? That doesn't happen because people are afraid to have the conversation. We cannot be afraid to ask. This is examples of how you can ask and still feel tactful. It is really intimidating to ask these questions sometimes, but it's our job to do them. So the other thing, the obvious thing, encourage the parents to be part of the unit. Obviously, again, as I talked about at the beginning, that does not mean that they are always solely the only one working with their youth. Because quite honestly, most of the times another adult's gonna be best. They're sick of seeing mom and dad. They see them all the time. But if something does happen, they can coach other adults along the process. And then hopefully ease their way out. Or help other scouts, or provide other services to the unit. These are all great things. And all of this can happen in joining conferences. So a lot of units really pushing these joining nights. A great opportunity, and I really recommend for your leadership within the unit, let the scoutmaster not be solely in charge of running the event. Let the youth run it, let the ASMs and other adult leaders run it, so that the scoutmaster can sit down with the parents and ask these questions ahead of time. Hey, your scout is coming in, disability or not, what's gonna help them be successful? Have this conversation before they're even joining. Because I don't know, as a parent, I would go, wow, they really care about my kid. I am gonna sign them up. Have these conversations, give information about their specific needs and their abilities. What are their strengths? How can I tie that into the unit and have them be a leader in our unit? Because like we said before, full extent participation is our goal. Good. So, conflict. Beth, this is what I was hinting at. This is a fun one. It's gonna happen. You can't avoid it. And it could be any type of conflict. It doesn't just have to be with an individual with a disability. This is good advice across the board. First thing, don't respond right away. It's really hard not to. Really hard not to, especially when someone says something that just gets under your skin. Quite honestly, some kids, that's their disability. They know how to say something to you that's just gonna cut. Don't respond. You've gotta remain calm. You are the adult, you are the role model. Say, hey, I can see you're upset right now. Why don't we both just take a couple of minutes and then we'll come back to this. But at the same time, communicate very clearly. You don't get to talk to me that way. Every single kid that I ever worked with on my caseload, I very clearly would say to them, I can see you are angry right now, but you don't get to disrespect me. So I am here to support you, and when you are calm, we will have this conversation. They need to know that their actions impact other people too. So it is okay to say, I feel hurt by what you just said to me. My importance with that type of messaging is try to use I statements. I feel this, not you did this. You made me angry. No, they didn't. You control your emotions. They might do something that might cause it, but you control your emotions. Staying calm in your communication of that. Offer that support. Hey, how can I help you right now? Really seems like you're upset. 5 minutes? What do you need? Do you need a snack? Sometimes they're hungry. Not a single person in this meeting can say that they've never been upset while they're hungry.
Hangry is a thing.
Hangry is a real
Angry
thing.
is a thing.
Work on solving the problem together. Don't just solve it for them. It does not teach them those skills. They need to work on that together. And again, seek guidance if you need it. Most of you are not like therapists and are not behavior specialists, unless you're Brett Gillia, where you might need help. It's okay. You've got your unit key threes. You've got other people like Dan or myself or Terry that are very happy to help. Seek guidance. Hey, this happened. It really hit me the wrong way. How would you handle this? Give me some advice. One of the hardest things for people to say is, I need help. I'm sorry, I need help. People don't like to say those sentences. In these situations, there's no shame in that. Just say, I need help. That's what we're here for. Good, Anna. So, some great news. Again, if you are not a special ed teacher or a service provider, you're not expected to have all of this just down pat. Unless you are somebody that is highly qualified in these criteria, Brett, then come see me, because I'm working on putting that committee together so that we can do that.
Yeah.
Keep getting tossed on.
Is this a sponsored roundtable?
It is, brought to you by Brett Gilligan. But there are people that can help and resources available. There's lots of online ones. I'm gonna show some here at the end of the slideshow. Upcoming committee, working on building that. I know that several people, 2 in this room, have said that they're interested in assisting with that. Thank you, Beth. Thank you, Brett. And we will continue to build that as we go. Again, as soon as I get a chairperson nailed down, we're hitting the ground running for that. Training opportunities. One of the websites I'm gonna show you, they actually have a whole section for in-person trainings. They're really good resources. You know, sometimes you look at some of those PowerPoints from National and you're like, this needs fixed, this needs tweaked. They're really good. They have a lot of really helpful information. I am willing to come and work with your adult leaders and help train them as well. When we build this committee, my goal is that we can do little sessions and trainings. Some of these merit badge universities and things along those lines, the adults can participate just as much. Go ahead, Dan. So, fun part of the night. These are direct questions that have been brought up within our district here, Lewis and Clark, that I have been asked to address. So first one, and this is again, general vague, how do you address behavior, youth or adult, that might be fine at home, but is not scout appropriate, like drinking energy drink? So first thing I would say when addressing any behavior, and I do this with camp staff, do this with campers, scoutmasters at camp, remind them the scout oath and the scout law, a lot of the times, this is the end of your conversation. You can say, can you tell me how that was kind? Can you tell me how that was courteous to others? A lot of the times, they just kind of need that perspective taken, that what they did was not appropriate. Next thing, you should have unit expectations of behavior. You should have unit expectations for this is how we are going to act when we are here. The expectation does not change because somebody has a disability. Again, they might need more support. They might need direct instruction and, hey, when we are here, this is how we have to do this. What I want to emphasize with this though, same. If those of you online probably didn't hear the car horn, I did. There's my ADHD, sorry, not sorry. With unit expectations, what I need to emphasize is that sometimes we put expectations into place that are tradition or policy that are not. A good example of this, where it directly impacted an individual with a disability, is from the Illinois area. One of the ladies I spoke to there when trying to build the committee. She said she went and observed a unit where the scout had been in Scouts for his entire life, but he could not get past scout rank. So she was like, let me just come and see. And the unit's like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know why he's not advancing. She spent one meeting and went, it's because after a 60-minute meeting, that's when you sign off rank advancements. And it's not anything to do with just waiting till the end of the meeting to do it. It's that your unit's procedure is that only the SPL can sign off. They need to line up single file at the end of the meeting and wait their turn for the SPL to come to them.
That's hellish.
That, as an adult, I'm like 60 minutes, bye. And some of you were like, hey, Ashley, you're at 60 minutes. I promise I'm almost done. But some of our expectations are not fair and they're not reasonable. So we need to keep that in mind. But when it comes to setting the expectations in the first place, you can't hold people accountable for things that they didn't know was the expectation. You've got to communicate that and educate it. If all of that fails, talk to your key three, but include the parent in the conversation. Hey, this is what we're seeing. How can we proceed with this? You shouldn't have the perspective of they broke the rules, they're out. If you have not tried to coach it, tried to correct it, tried to fix it, then you can't just be like, bye. However, if you've done X, Y, Z and it's still not enough, that's up to the unit. That's a bigger conversation because expectations are still not being met.
Hey,
So,
Ash, I would,
Dave,
thank you. I would real quick add that, and you're probably on this and it'd be a future topic or thing, but you know, sometimes what people may perceive as an inappropriate behavior, they're just misunderstanding the behavior. A lack of eye contact, some type of stimming, the screaming or the making noises.
Absolutely.
You know, and it's like, look, why are you making those noises? Look me in the eye
Absolutely.
and talk to me. And totally inappropriate and destructive. But the scout,
Absolutely.
the adult might not even realize it.
Yeah, and that comes to like being educated ourselves. What if we have those pre-joining conversations with the parents, you'll kind of know some of these tendencies. I know some kids that they'll have full conversations with you, but they won't look you in the eyes once. And you know what? Actually, as an adult, I'm okay with that. In some cultures, it's actually disrespectful to make eye contact with educators, if you didn't know that. So like, there are different things that come involved with that you might think that it is inappropriate, but that is your perspective. Sometimes we are at fault when it comes to that. Beth, you had something?
Us versus them.
Can you say more?
The key three parent thing, and before it ever needs to get to that point, conversations need to be had and it needs to be clear to all parties that this is not a you versus me thing.
Yes.
This is a us versus the problem thing.
Yeah.
This is the problem and we're all working together to solve it.
Exactly. I think, and even saying instead of us, it's us versus finding a solution. Like, how can we focus on problem solving as a group? If you've got that rapport already because you've been having these conversations with the parents, it's a lot easier. Again, the first time you're calling the parent can't be the time when you're saying, hey, you need to come pick your kid up. Can't be the first conversation. Okay, so a little bit more on misbehavior and corrective actions. And we're gonna go through these a little bit quicker. Has to be productive. We talked about this already. This is a big one here. Disability might be an explanation, but it's not an excuse. Expectations remain the same. Additional support might need English. You heard what I said. It's fine. Helpful self-awareness questions. Sometimes they don't have the perspective-taking ability to realize they did something that somebody else perceived as wrong. So if they have an outburst, sometimes they're mad at themselves. They're not mad at you. They might have yelled at you, but they're not mad at you. So you might need to have this reflective conversation with them or with yourself. It can be both. What was I feeling before I did X, Y, Z? What did I need in that moment? How can I handle this differently if I'm in a similar situation again? That is going to determine your corrective actions. If they can reflect and say, this is a problem, and some people really struggle with this because of their disability. They just don't have that perspective taking ability or self-awareness. It's our job to help them through that process. Again, parent, great resource for this. Next question. What if I'm just a parent in the troop and the scout with the disability is being unkind or bullying my scout? Expectations, expectations, expectations. Nowhere does it say bullying is allowed. So seek your support from your key three, but also as the parent, talk to their parent. It's okay to have that conversation. How you approach the conversation is going to depend on your result. Some people are very defensive. Not my angel will never do that. It's how we start that conversation. If I walk up to Beth and say, your kid, okay, not gonna go well.
We're throwing hands.
Yeah. Is that how we really want to start that conversation? How about we start with, hey Beth, good to see you today. Thanks for coming to the scout meeting. We all know the little Oreo sandwich. It's a great conversation, like piece, like start with your goods and like you gotta sometimes address the bad. That's fine. You've got to have the conversations. Nobody wants to have these conversations, but we have to.
I do think, thing I suggest is, I will write down those difficult conversations, kind of like how I think it might go and how I might respond in
Oh, yeah.
some script, because it helps me during those
Me too.
challenging conversations, yeah, because they're never fun,
Nope.
but it does help and it helps the parents I work with,
Yeah.
so.
And a lot of times it's that prepare for the worst.
Yeah.
Okay, well, if they do start screaming at me, how am I gonna respond now? Okay, if another parent or someone is screaming at you, you don't have to continue with that conversation. Terry's favorite line is, we can continue this conversation when you can talk to me respectfully, and then he'll just leave. And that's okay. Now, for me, I don't like to walk away because I think that's gonna make him more mad, but that's something that, get that key three support, get your DE, get somebody else involved, camp leadership, you can seek additional support. Bullying is not okay, period. Especially if it's coming from adults too. Okay, role models, things like that. Next question. As a scoutmaster, how do I work with a scout when their parent or guardian won't support them? They don't come to meetings. Well, have the conversation. Speak to them preemptively. Do not wait. Pre-joining conference, highly, highly, highly encourage it. You can set expectations of parent involvement within your units. Sometimes that means explicitly saying, until further notice, your scout cannot participate unless you are present to assist and supervise. Nobody likes to say that line, but it's okay as a unit to set that expectation. It sucks because it's naturally feels not inclusive, but are they being successful? And are they getting the best out of the experience if they don't have the support they need? And how is that impacting the other kids in the unit? Having a strategic pairing buddy, like I talked about before, it shouldn't take away from that scout's individual experience to support this other scout. It's not their job, right? They're not getting paid to be that support. It's their experience, their journey too. You sometimes have to draw a hard line. I counter this with again saying, do not solely rely on the parent. build your volunteers and your adult leaders and figure out the strengths, figure out who works best with that scout. Ask your district executive, ask me, ask Terry, we will give you support, but do not solely rely on the parent. It will be important to watch this process closely in general. We want to build their independence, and sometimes when parents are always there doing it for them, they're not learning anything. And a lot of times, this sentence is really interesting and it's not something I think a 9-year-old would say because it wasn't the 9-year-old. Keep that in mind. So with that,
This is backed as well by the unit leader signature on the application for youth, for the unit. Unit leader is the one who makes that determination whether or not a youth participates. Just a site, I guess.
before we look at additional resources here and provide some contact information, does anybody have any questions? I have to implore that if it is a unit specific question, that you leave out any identifying information for the individuals. So for example, Susie Scott from Troop 9 did this, and this. How will you handle that? Let's leave names and stuff like that out of it. Any general support type questions, and I'm happy to answer any individual ones as well. I'm gonna put my email up on the screen. I have my business cards here. All of you know where my office is if you're in the building, so anything for the good of the
You
order.
know, I have a comment, I think, behavior doesn't change in a day.
Mm-hmm,
So I think that's really critical, because, as a pack
absolutely.
cub master, it's a constant working process
Mhm.
and supporting it, so. And it's hard, and I attend, for my other son who has a disability, I attend, but I go on everything, I go on Klondike. And I support, and they're like, are you coming? I said, yes, like, well, we need a second adult, I said, well, yes, but also I'm always like, I'm there, but I'm an exception, I think, to that rule, and I'm only going on everything. Believe me, I'd rather not cancel my lecture,
You'll be both.
but it is, but I also think it's taken me a year to help my son get to where he needs to be, and I think for the pack side, it's like, we're working with a couple of kids, and I worked with den leaders, and I'm like, we gotta be patient, and I get it's frustrating, it's hard, and then I will go in and I'll work one-on-one with the kids, and we're supportive, so, but it just takes time.
Yeah. And being on the behavior realm, you know what extinction bursts,
Yeah.
on anywhere from 2 weeks to 8 weeks sometimes.
Yeah, it can take a long time.
You've gotta be patient, and we can't take our frustrations with the behavior is communicating something, like Dave said. There's a need there, and it's communicating something.
And it's really hard, I mean, I get it, I've done it for 20 years, and, but it's hard, I always think about when people come to me and they're like, all right, this kid's doing A, B, and C. You know, I'm like, okay, you know, like this, for me, it's easy, but for them, it's hard, it just takes a lot of
Absolutely.
patience, and so I've seen some really good kids come out of that just in a year and a half, 2 years.
Absolutely.
And some of them have to go home early.
And it's okay to draw that line.
I had the fall camperee is like, my own son is like, I'm gonna call your mom to go pick you up because you're going to go home, or I'm gonna drive you back from Lewistown in the middle of the night, I'm gonna drive you home, so.
Tell him that you'll call me next time.
Yeah, so anyway, I think it's hard, but I also get, patience, sometimes some of the kids. So you get through it, and it's really hard, I mean, it's just really hard, I mean, I can't.
It can be,
explain
absolutely.
away. But it's hard, I mean, it's hard for people who just don't have to deal with it all day long, it's just like, what do I do?
I'm worried about what tomorrow night's meeting is gonna be after 6 weeks, basically, of
Yeah.
not having met.
Oh, yeah.
And you're gonna
Because
see
of
why
the holidays.
structure is
Yeah,
so
that's-
important.
We're meeting tomorrow, Cubs tomorrow, so.
Absolutely.
So I need to go home and plan the meeting for,
Be very structured.
lions and tigers.
Oh, yeah. Beth?
Summer camp is hard for a lot of kids,
Yes.
especially the ones that need structure, because, they're used to this in their everyday life, or even at troop meetings, or, at school and whatnot, and then all of a sudden you go to summer camp, and it's all out the window, and they all kind of lose their minds.
And trust me, Melita's is
collectively.
as structured as it's gonna get, because a special ed teacher wrote the program. But at the end of the day, like, I tell my staff, I tell campers and adult leaders, you know where the most incident reports come from? Troop time, free time, because lack of supervision and freedom. Of course I'm gonna sprint through camp with my pocket knife, nobody's here to tell me no. It's a very common thing.
And usually by like day 2 or 3, they're tired,
Mm-hmm.
and then they're.
Dysregulated.
Yeah, dysregulated, and they haven't showered, and the adults are tired.
I didn't get a shower, or I'm not sleeping because there's bugs in my tent, or I didn't go to the bathroom because there's bugs in the bathroom, like, there's a lot that goes into.
We had to
people
do a
don't think
lesson
about.
on how the showers work.
Oh, I do it with my staff. I
Yeah.
teach them how to do laundry, I teach them literally, I'm like, if I look at you and I can tell you've not showered, you're not doing your job until you shower. And sometimes you've gotta have that it's again, hard conversations, nobody wants to say it, but you gotta. Dave, did you have something?
Well, yeah, two things maybe. One was, sometimes that unstructured time can be some of the best also.
Oh, absolutely.
And, you know, and that's one of the beauties of scouting. So balancing that, like, I think we do a pretty good job. You were talking about the, hitting on those hygiene. And funny story, I remember talking to my troop when they were mostly 11, 12-year-olds, and it's at camp, and this is actually, happened to be at K-Bar M, but, you know, it was like, okay, has everybody, drinking enough water? Yeah, okay, everybody raise your hand if you've had a bowel movement, okay?
Yep.
Day 3, you know, raise your hand if you've changed your underwear.
New socks.
Hopefully those last 2 weren't connected to each other. And,
That too.
and you know, the kids laugh, they get it, and they learn.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. All right, so some key takeaways here. This is a lot of the theme stuff that we've discussed. First one, be prepared, have the conversations. It saves you a lot of stress. It saves you a lot of anxiety. Plan them out. It's very helpful. Sometimes it's helpful to sit down with somebody who is not going or has not been to camp before and said, okay, let's talk through each day. It can be time consuming. We know that you guys give a lot of your time to the program already, but I guarantee you it's gonna save you a lot of time later. Save you a lot of problems. Hey, we taught our troop, this is what you need to pack for each day. This is your activity for each day. This is what a typical day looks like. It helps prepare you. And then you have less behaviors. Next big takeaway. Oh, just kidding. Don't be afraid to have the conversations. Scout Oath and the Scout Law are a great tool for behavior management for everyone, including ourselves sometimes. Have that conversation as well. And there are so many resources available. Please don't be intimidated by these things. It can be a lot when you don't have credentials that you do this every day. It can be a lot. So, speaking of resources, here are a few.
I will also share this.
Yes, I asked Dan to send some stuff out here. So these are really good websites. The Inclusion Toolbox, highly recommend. Look through it. There's trainings in there for leaders. There's trainings in there for other scouts. There's so much that you can do with this stuff. And then also there are some social media accounts and things that you can follow as well. No Scout Left Behind is a really good one. I highly recommend that one in particular. There's some really great admin on that page that are really good situationally. Like if you're like, hey, this is the situation we're dealing with. I would like to advocate that if you're feeling like you need to post on the social media page about a situation, please come see me first, because maybe I can help, or maybe Terry can help. If we're feeling like this situation is so big that we need to seek advice and feedback from other people, let's try to find that within our council first. We do have highly trained professionals here. And then there is that one, you know, we don't have the answer. I might send an email to Alyssa Hightower, who's with the Special Needs Committee. There are great people that can provide support. So my last slide here is just my information, Terry's information, and then I also have business cards. So again, everybody that is currently present are all faces that I've seen or already have my email address. So this is not something I need to give out. I was prepared for people that did not know me, and I'm grateful that I didn't have to face that anxiety. But I thank you guys for sitting through my jabbering, and really appreciate that you guys want to do what's best for Scout. Because again, at the end of the day, that's what we're all here for. It's our mission statement. That's the support that we're looking to offer. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Miss Ashley.
I feel like I could talk for hours.